Hey, you guys know what the church is? Yeah, I mean, now some people think the church is the building, but it's not. Church is actually people, right? And I don't know if you ever thought about that story, the gospel story. This church started with one person, started with Peter. Peter was we call him the first pope. He was kind of the head apostle, the head student of Jesus. And then it was started with Peter, and then went with the other 12, and then in the spring every year, we celebrate a thing called Pentecost, and there were 3,000 people joined the church that day, and the church just got bigger and bigger and bigger, and now there's like 1.2 billion people in the Catholic Church all over the world. So I got a song for this. It goes like this. And let me sing it to you once, and we'll see if we can do it together. It goes like this. It goes, pardon me, nice frog I brought with me. I am the church, you are the church, we are the church together. All of God's children all around the world. Yes, we're the church together. You want to try it? I am the church, you are the church, we are the church together. All of God's children all around the world. Yes, we're the church together. Now, adults, I know you can't hear them. They're singing pretty well. Why don't you join us? I am the church, you are the church, we are the church together. All of God's children all around the world. Yes, we're the church together. And don't forget, that includes you too, which is why it's always so nice when you join us. Your parents bring you to church because you're part of us, and we're so glad you're here. Hey, and just 2 more weeks until faith formation starts. So if you haven't signed up, your parents haven't signed you up, make sure they do that for you, because that's another part of it's another way to be part of the church. Okay? Hey, thanks for coming up. All right. That's a great lesson for all of us, but if you'll allow me a slightly different topic for the adults. I was wondering if we could talk about threats. If you are a military commander, you would want to be aware of the threats against your army. It means you would be careful would help you then in deploying your troops to make sure that you could repel whatever threat or threats you had decided were present. And for myself, some of you know, I bicycle a lot, and I do that out on the roads. And there are, as you can imagine, a certain amount of threats that I have to deal with being a bicycle against big cars. But one of the things that I know is that the vast majority of all accidents between bicycles and cars happen in intersections. And so as I approach an intersection, I am all the more vigilant to make sure that I will get through that intersection safely. We, of course, all have threats to our personal happiness and well-being that come from all sorts of places. Some of them from our society, some of them just from our relationships, things like that. But interesting enough, we're not always really good about that last category. While I'm very good at knowing the threats on a bicycle, I, like most people, are not always as good at evaluating the threats to, say, my happiness. I get this because it comes from this branch of science called behavioral science. And over the last, maybe decade or so, I've been doing a lot of reading about this, and I'm just fascinated by these studies that are done that sort of reveal, if you will, something of our human nature. So just for example, I've learned this one just recently. We tend to overestimate success. That is, we tend to overestimate the chances of success. We tend to underestimate failure. If you want a good example of that, you just have to look at the lottery. Most people know that the odds of winning the lottery are very, 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 very small. And yet we still play it. And why do we do that? Because we say things like, well, someone's got to win it, might as well be me. My time is coming up, something like that. We find ways to make it seem like, no, this is actually possible. I could do that. Of course, we're not helped by signs at stores where we buy those tickets that tell us, that, well, last week, this much money was won by people that bought tickets at this store. Because we think, oh, well, see, it is possible. That's just human nature, maybe part of our fallen nature, if you will. But the point of it is that we're not always really good about sort of understanding ourselves. Now, I bring this up because I thought this might be helpful to us. The second reading in Paul's letter to the Romans. He starts off, oh, the depth of the riches and wisdom and knowledge of God. How inscrutable are his judgments, how unsearchable his ways. The depth of the riches and wisdom and knowledge of God. God is, to put it bluntly, crazy smart, I guess. But think of it this way. This passage reminds us that God is not us. He's not a superhuman being. For the kids, God is not a Marvel superhero. He's not just, just like us, but just better in some way. God is God. He is the creator. We are created beings. And because of that, that means that when God created us, that means that God knows all about us. He knows all about humanity. He knows how he made us. He knows what our tendencies are. He knows all about our fallen nature. And so when we have these moments where we come up with, these possibilities where we're not quite really good at assessing what's going on in our lives, it is possible for us to turn to the Lord and to say, hey, God, you know me better even than I know myself. I need some help here. So just for example, to return to the lottery example, there's a proverb, it's in chapter 13, that basically the proverb says, let me get the right thing, it says, wealth gained hastily will dwindle, but whoever gathers little by little will increase it. It warns against getting rich quick. Because basically, if you think about it, we just almost know this from experience, stories that we've read of athletes that suddenly, they get out of college and they get a pro contract, and they got millions and millions and millions of dollars. And what do they do with it? And how does it affect them? There are studies that will tell you that the majority of people that win the lottery a year later wish they had not. Because, of course, we all think, oh, if I had all this money, all my problems would disappear. But they will tell you that the money caused more trouble than it was ever worth, and I wish I had never played. We know this somewhat from experience, but God knows this of us. We're just not really likely to be good at what to do with a lot of money. If I could, I'm not your lawyer, of course, but parents, grandparents, you're making up your will. You might want to be careful about leaving a large chunk of wealth to your kids all at once. This proverb would seem to suggest that that might be a burden to them. And on the other hand, if you had your estate buy, say, an annuity that would pay them a set amount every month for the rest of their life, you might be doing a great service to them. That is the wisdom of God. The question is, are we willing to take it? Because there are some areas of our lives where I think we are really quick to suggest, oh, maybe, yes, I know what God wants me to do, but really, I don't think I have to worry about that. This is Safe Haven Sunday, a Sunday where the diocese asks us to take a look at the threats to us that are present online, images, videos that lead us down the wrong path. And while many of us would appreciate that, oh yeah, when it gets really bad for a particular person, that's really bad. But so many of us, we're not very good about acknowledging the threat to ourselves, because we're so quick to say, it's not that big a deal. I don't do it very much. It's not that, I could stop anytime I wanted to. We got excuse after excuse after excuse. But what does the good Lord tell us? You might remember this in the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus said, "You've heard it said, don't commit adultery." We would all agree with that. Who's ever going to suggest that adultery is a good thing? But then Jesus says, you need to be really careful about lust. And that's a different ballgame, because adultery, sure, I can do that. I can be faithful in my marriage. The lust thing, whoa. And so the question comes down to, are we willing to trust the Lord on this? God, who loves us, wants the best for us, knows all about us, and he's saying, you should put some effort into this. You need to be really careful about this. This will go bad quickly if you're not careful. Are we willing to listen? Now, of course, I don't know. Every Sunday, so many of you walk through the door. It's a ton of different stories. I don't know what your issue is. It may not be the issue of lust. It may not be the issue of money. Those are two often awkward topics that we are uncomfortable talking about, uncomfortable even turning to the Lord with. But it might be something else. I don't know what that might be. My encouragement to you today, though, is just to be honest with yourself. And for me, too, to be honest and realize, there's some things in my life that I think, they could be better, but it's okay. And the good Lord is saying to me, no, frankly, it's not okay. It's not okay. You need to take a step in doing a little better in this area. And so I just encourage you to listen to the Lord. Because think back. Do you have a story in your life? Or has someone ever told you a story where, I was struggling with this thing, I decided I was going to follow the Lord's leading. I was going to do what the Lord asked me to do. And it turned out awfully. I wish I hadn't done it. I don't have that story in my life. I've never even heard of anybody say that story. I've heard plenty of people say, I knew what God wanted me to do and I decided not to do it. Whoops. So let's be that person that says, okay, I know what God wants me to do. It's going to be hard. I'm going to do it imperfectly, but at least I'll do a little better and then see what happens. Because indeed, that's the sort of thing that'll bring us to that abundant life that the Lord promises us.